Welcome, people. You had quite a lot of stuff today that you processed, and I was part of some of these wonderful presentations today. So I will talk about nonsense today. I will challenge you a little bit. I will talk about beliefs. It's all related to the crazy world we currently live in. And as you can see, the title of presentation is Shifting Paradigms, Decolonizing Everything. And just wanted to say that colonization is not only the damage that British, Portuguese, and Spanish have done to the rest of the world, but colonization in my universe is also related to colonization of mind that is very present. And in the name of that, I will introduce myself the way how I usually introduce myself. And it's kind of bordering with cultural appropriation because I will introduce myself in Maori language and in the way how Maori people introduce themselves. And later on, I will reflect why I've done it this way. So, tēnā koutou katoa, e rere kau mai te awa nui nei, mai te kahui maunga ki te tangaroa, ko au te awa, ko te awa ko au, ko Medvednica te maunga, ko Sava te awa, ko Air New Zealand Boeing 777 te waka, ko Ngāti Pakeha te iwi, ko tangata tarara te hapu, ko te noho kotahitanga te marae, ko ngā haumaha ki te wharenui, ko Ksenija Napan tōku ingo anō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So when I came to New Zealand, I learned that this is how Indigenous people introduce themselves. And you will probably notice some words that you understand here, unless you are fluent in Te Reo Māori. And you probably notice there is Medvednica there is Sava there, and a few other words that you may understand. So Maori introduced themselves by their mountain, and their mountain is the place where they were born. And this is the place how they relate to mountains as living beings. They also introduced themselves with a river or with a water that flows through the place where they were born, on place that they connect with. So as you can see, I was born in Zagreb because Medvednica is my mountain, Sava is my river, and then I shifted. And after the war, I moved to Aotearoa, New Zealand. And suddenly nationality became completely irrelevant. And I was called Pakeha. And Pakeha means person of a fair skin. So for the first time in my life, my identity was determined by the color of my skin. That was quite an interesting experience. And then also I identify as coming from Croatia, and Dalmatians came to New Zealand a long, long time ago in 1920s and 1930s. And they established themselves as incredibly hardworking people. So they call them tarara, and they call them tarara because this is how we bloody talk. We have a rolling R and we talk very fast. So the image is the marae, or a meeting house where I used to teach when I was at Unitec. It's a teaching marae. If it wasn't a teaching marae, I wouldn't be able to claim it because, of course, I'm not Maori. But because I used to teach there and I was warmly welcomed there, I can claim that marae as being my own. She's also a living being, and teaching in that space is quite incredible because the walls talk, and people, when learning in that space, their learning becomes immediately transformative. It reminds me a little bit on our sessions on Lockroom, when we would go at Lockroom and just sit in a circle and learn in the circle, like around the campfire. And there is some magic in the nature, and I've seen that you have quite a few sessions in outdoors during this symposium, and it's absolutely fantastic. And also, as you can see in this introduction, I put my name the last. So the purpose of introducing yourself this way is that people immediately see connections, and then during the break, they see how they can connect to you. On the left top corner is a proverb that kind of speaks to me, and that one is an ecological one, because it says the river flows from the mountains to the sea. I am the river is me. And somehow it relates to my ecological viewpoint. So now I would like to invite you to reflect on this question. Is a new vision being born from the rubbles of colonized, wounded, and exploited world, or not? So is this disaster and what is happening currently globally and locally, is this an opportunity to co-create a new way of being? Or are we just going rapidly downhill? And I will not ask you to publicly say what you think and what is your response to this question, but just answer it to yourself. And for me, this question is closely linked to the idea and to another question, which is, can we co-create a socially just, spiritually respectful, and ecologically sustainable world? Because this is my dream. This is, and I'm a hopeless optimist, and I hope that it is possible to create a socially just, spiritually respectful, and ecologically sustainable world. But I don't know how many lifetimes will it take for that to come to fruition. So regardless of your answer being yes, no, or maybe, I would like to invite you to reflect what are the beliefs that we need to change to make it possible. And probably most of you know the story of a butterfly and a caterpillar. And when caterpillar goes into a cocoon, they create a soup, and the body of a caterpillar completely disintegrates, and then some imaginal cells start appearing, and those imaginal cells don't look like a butterfly yet, but somehow they manage to self-organize, and then they turn themselves into a butterfly. I don't know if we are those imaginal cells as social workers and as people who want to create betterment in the world or not. I really don't know. I'm in a deep not knowing, but I hope that we will manage to transform and to utilize this horrible crisis that the whole world is in to create something better and not something worse. So before we can do that, we probably need to dispel some myths and some beliefs. And Gandhi said be careful of what you believe, because your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits, and your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. So somehow beliefs are important. And the first belief that it's still very present in today's world is that man is born into sin, essentially corrupt to the core. And I'm really happy that the belief is man, not humanity, because we still have 52% of population which is not born into sin, essentially corrupt to the core. But this is really kind of more or less of a joke. I believe that all of us here don't believe in that nonsense, but unfortunately, a large proportion of the world still believe in it. And replacing that belief cannot happen by might or by force. Replace of that belief needs to come from inside, which means that humans need to realize that they are okay. And probably our job as social workers is a lot of appreciation and of our clients and people with whom we work, and opening our hearts to that connection is quite important. So now I would like to invite you to breathe in and out and to connect with your heart and soul, and just connect with yourself and just take 1 or 2 deep breaths to make that connection. And after doing that, I would like you to look around the room and connect with at least one person from that space. And just see with your consciousness, see the light in that person, see their positive characteristics, see their glow, and just acknowledge them. Just acknowledge that one other person or two, and just give them a nod. And also suspend your judgment and laugh at your cynicism that may have appeared, but just make that connection because we need it. The second nonsense that now when you made a connection that I would like to make as the nonsense that hatred and vengeance are justified and eye for an eye should be executed, which is another nonsense that some people still believe in. And it's that external control that we need to control others, and we need to revenge. We have a justice system which is based on revenge and retribution and not on rehabilitation. Although sometimes we tend to say that it is based on rehabilitation, but really it is. So again, shifting that belief towards a belief of forgiveness. And it's really interesting. We can theoretically say that hatred and vengeance is not justified. But when it comes to crunch, and when we are personally involved, we can still trigger that old and pretty useless belief. The next nonsensical belief is don't show your real feelings or you'll get hurt. Create a convincing persona to present to the world. And I think pretty much the whole Western world is based on that belief. I'm talking about these beliefs because all of them are quite colonizing, and they colonize indigenous beliefs that were contrary to that, where authenticity and directness is cherished. And I remember that when I moved to New Zealand, I was too direct, because in Croatia, we kind of say it as it is, I hope still. Whereas Western world, generally speaking, is very much into talking in gloves and being kind of you present yourself the way that you believe will give you brownie points or some kind of award. This is pretty schizophrenic. So if you live in an environment where you don't show your real feelings, when you create a persona that it's not a real you kind of lose your sense of coherence. When you lose your sense of coherence, you lose your true self. And as a consequence, your immune system suffers and your life becomes much more complicated than when you are openly vulnerable and authentic. So, I mean, there is a good saying, be you, nobody can do it better. But I think that one of the effects of colonization is that pretense performativity and creating personas that will get you money, prestige, or whatever. The fourth one is emphasize imaginary hierarchies and focus on competition so that the base can rise to the top. And I love this picture because regardless of the crown, this is still a bunch of bananas. And this imaginary hierarchies are their only purposes for people, I think, of creative mind to dismantle them and to challenge them and to fight against them And I think the role of social work and the core of social work is social justice. So those artificial hierarchies are there to be shaken and challenged. Emphasis on equity and fairness is life-giving. It also creates space for reciprocity in relationships and co-creation. And if we focus only on hierarchies or hierarchical thinking, we are losing again a lot of our creativity. Nonsense number 5, avoid personal responsibility by blaming those above or below in the hierarchy. And taking personal responsibility for actions is important, but as we mentioned in a discussion earlier, yes, personal responsibility, but am I responsible only for me? Or am I responsible for a community? Or how does all that work? We just legalized euthanasia in New Zealand. And it's an interesting thing because we might think that we have responsibility for our lives, but then when you live within a group, are you actually in charge only for your life? And do you have a right to just leave when you feel that your time to leave is? Or is that a decision that needs to happen within a family or within a close group of friends when it's your time to leave, if you can take your life legally? So anyway, that personal responsibility sounds good in theory, but sometimes in practice it can be quite challenging. And we as social workers are often facing those ethical dilemmas, like the one, if somebody doesn't want to take a jab, is our job to force them, manipulate them, coerce them, or make them do it because they may be perceived as a threat to humanity or people around them. So yeah, anyway, just an open question. Nonsense 6, people need to be led or controlled by those believed to be better or more capable. Major nonsense, because they don't. And we are actually, I believe, shifting into a space where we don't need leaders. We just need to figure out a different system where we can co-lead and co-create our realities without those hierarchies. I will just quickly whiz through that because I'd rather us have some time to talk as well. The other nonsense is the mind and science are supreme, or the imaginary man with the beard rules it all. So regardless of if you are a believer of a scientific dogma, or if you are a believer of the imaginary man with a beard, it doesn't actually make much sense, because science and spirituality are part of the same whole. And if we subscribe to dry science without mystery, it loses its joy and fun. And also, if we are fundamentalists of any kind of religion, again, we kind of just shut our eyes to the whole world of science, which can create and come up with some wonderful solutions. So that mystery, getting rid of the mystery, I think is very dangerous for humanity. And also those polarized views can prevent us from potentially useful dialogues and debate, particularly with COVID. I'm really concerned that any discussion, at least in New Zealand, I don't know how is it in Croatia, but in New Zealand, any discussion gets shut, and you are either put in an anti-vax camp, conspiracy theory camp, or you are put in a camp of people who are obedient and listen to the mainstream, and there is no dialogue between the two groups. And because there is no dialogue, both groups are becoming more and more extreme and more polarized, which is not really good and not scientific at all, and let alone not very spiritual. So the other one is that nonsense number 8 is don't question the accepted paradigm or religious dogma and focus on 3-dimensional 5-sensory world. On the first day, we discussed intelligence, and I think fostering fluid intelligence is a good way to go. But this may also be an outdated paradigm. But the more I'm connected with nature, the more intelligence I perceive with bees, with animals, with intelligence of plants, like incredible intelligence of plants, and various ways of how intelligence manifests itself. Whereas we humans believe that we are on the top of some imaginary hierarchy where we narcissistically put ourselves on the top, but we are the only beings on this planet that other animals don't want to relate to, apart from dogs. But it's really interesting that all other animals run away from us. And that's not because we are predators. That's probably for some other reason. But anyway, just awareness of interconnectedness of the universe and our understanding that we don't live on Earth, but that we are of Earth, and that without Earth and the whole system, we cannot survive. So that links to nonsense number 9, which is about categorizing and dissecting nature, allows us to better control it and to profit from it. And this meme came on my Facebook. When you understand that under capitalism, a forest has no value until it's cut down, you begin to understand the root of our ecological crisis. And it's absolutely dreadful, because that capitalism currently rules the whole world. We actually do not have the alternative. So it seems to me that all around the world, capitalism is prevailing at the expense of life. And it's working, it's continuously working on the paradigm of exploitation, and it's deeply imbued in Christian faith. And that Christian faith really got distorted over time to become a faith of exploitation as opposed to guardianship. That was the original idea, which is pretty dreadful. So recognizing the interrelatedness of all life leads to greater growth and harmony. So when I realize that my life depends on the life of a bee, then I might be more respectful when I see the bee, and I might become more proactive into planting more flowers and food for that bee, because we are interrelated. So the other nonsense is about order and Ordnungsdisziplin and Arbeit macht frei. And the other day I woke up with a thought, and the thought was, oh fuck, what if Nazis actually won the war? And that was at the backdrop of growing neo-Nazism around the world, and growing white supremacy movements, and separation. And I thought, wow, what if? So I would like us to welcome the flexibility and the occasional chaos and disorder as means to have new possibilities and having fun. really having fun and enjoying life. Because this last 2 years have been quite challenging for the whole planet. And maybe humans have realized not to take themselves too seriously, because taking themselves too seriously leads to another prison. So embrace chaos. Nonsense number 11, that one relates to what Vita mentioned, which is about value boundaries and divisions. Well, yes, professional boundaries are important, but for what purpose? And yeah, this may give us security, safety, and comfort, but to whom? So in social work, healthy boundaries are very important. But while respecting and honoring them, isn't our job to build bridges instead of walls? And when I was learning social work, we were taught not to show our emotions with our clients. And then I realized that only when I show my emotions, I was effective. Whenever I attempted with a lot of difficulty to be a robot, my interventions, and that intervention is a bad term, my interactions and my communications with my clients were not actually effective. So I'm calling for blurring all the boundaries and challenging all the boundaries and retaining those that are useful, but completely discarding those that are not. So context and purpose is important. So yes, by all means, retain boundaries that serve the purpose, but discard those that don't. Nonsense number 12, not many nonsenses left, guys. You can't trust anyone. So that non-trusting is another product of capitalism, because marketing strategies taught us not to believe. So when something is advertised, you don't believe it. You know that there is a trick, there is a catch, there is some kind of manipulation. So the thing is that if we can overcome that and find out a way how to trust and how to genuinely connect, we may decolonize our minds that have been indoctrinating or indoctrinated over years of manipulation. So it relates to a lot of fears, fear of death, fear of unknown, fear of difference, mother of all discriminations, fear of indifference, which is creativity killer. You'll have a group of zombies and people just nodding and going through motions and doing things just to tick boxes. Trust is having the benefit of a foresight. So we have a benefit of a hindsight. And if you look at your life, everything looks perfect. And when you can see your life in perspective in the past, you can see that things led to something. But unfortunately, we don't have the benefit of a foresight to trust the future and to trust that life just is. And yeah, nobody will get out alive, but life just is. So the final one, I think, is number 13, which is focus on defeating and conquering the enemy with the attitude of us versus them. And how can we, instead of saying but, say more ands? How can we embrace challenges and preventing disasters? How can we integrate our intuition and scientific findings? And also end the war against the nature and embrace her changes and transformation as we are part of her? How can we figure out a way to appreciate indigenous wisdom and appreciate grandmother's wisdom that still lives in some of us? So my question for all of us is how to decolonize our minds while swimming in the soup of colonization, indoctrination, exploitation, manipulative power. Is it possible to do that at all, or is it just another pie in the sky? So decolonizing means unlearning. Unlearning with your whole being, mind, body, spirit, and with your whole community. So what history and geography books taught us, and what have we learned by deeper exploration and critical reflection? So how can we explore our indigenous? You know, we keep saying that colonized nations are usually brown people who live in disempowered environments, and we are completely blind to colonization of everybody on this planet and to our disconnect from our indigenous. When I ask my brown students, connect to your indigenous, what is your indigenous? They can immediately say. When I ask my white student, what is your indigenous? They don't even understand the question. And that's really interesting. So something happened, some kind of disconnect happened in Western world that disconnected so-called colonizers from their true being. And this is what happens in all wars. Victims somehow get over their trauma faster and with more post-traumatic growth than abusers themselves. So sometimes abusers are bigger victims than those who have been abused. So there is that dynamic. And I don't want to dwell for too long on it, but just wanted to share this term with you. And the term is Moana Jackson's term. And Moana Jackson is a Maori lawyer who lives in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and is very well known for his beautiful, mild manner and his transformative way of talking to people. So he rejected the term colonization, decolonization. He rejected the term, and he introduced a new term, which is called the ethic of restoration, which I really like, because it is a positive term, and it is about how can we restore the damage that has been done on all of us, perpetrators of violence, but also victims of the violence. And this dyadic form is another term that we need to blur the boundaries between, because there is a whole spectrum. And as you can see on this image, this girl is not liberating birds as a human being. She's just cherishing and sharing a commonality of a sense of freedom with them. And I'd like you to take this picture with you in terms of enjoying the journeys of people you work with, either if you are a teacher, a social worker, a community developer, a lawyer, or any other profession that deals with humanity, because it's a privilege to be present to expression of somebody else's freedom. And the whole term decolonization, I pinched it from Trissos Auerbach and Kati, which is about decolonizing ecology. And they talk about decolonizing mind, knowing your own histories, decolonizing access. We mentioned a digital divide earlier today, and digital divide is humongous. It excludes older people immediately, but it excludes poor people as well. And decolonizing that exists when we have the ability of connecting the world with the internet, and we still don't do that, we still charge people for it, while we have enough money to absorb the global pandemic, it's really interesting. Where do we put our common money? That it's an illusion anyway, but I won't go into that. Decolonizing expertise, which is really about acknowledging Indigenous wisdom. And when I talk about Indigenous wisdom, it's wisdom that is deeply in your DNA. So we all have it. It's just that sometimes we detach ourselves from it. And then practice ethical ecology and inclusive themes. Again, bring people together. Make friends with people who think very differently to you. And sometimes it's really hard. You know, I'm talking about it, but sometimes when I'm faced with somebody who thinks very differently than me, I need to bite my tongue many times. So how can we change our world? How can we decolonize it? So the story is that we can do it with our hands. And we can do it with a little help of our grandmas. And regardless if you have a living grandmother or you've got a grandmother living in your genes, she is still there. So this wisdom is there. So how can we access it? And there is this poem written by Elena Bernabe, and she says, probably I don't need to read it for you. Do you want to read it for yourself, or do you want me to read it for you? You want me to read it for you, or do you want to read it yourself? Can't hear it. Just read it for yourself in your own time.
You can read it as well.
Okay. So, Grandma, how do you deal with pain? With your hands, dear. When you do it with your mind, the pain hardens even more. With your hands, Grandma? Yes. Our hands are the antennas of our soul. When you move them by sewing, cooking, painting, touching the earth, or sinking it into the earth, they send signals of caring to the deepest part of you. And your soul calms down. This way, she doesn't have to send pain anymore to Charlotte. Are hands really that important? Yes, my girl. Think of babies. They get to know the world thanks to their touches. When you look at the hands of older people, they tell more about their lives than any other part of the body. Everything that is made by hand, so it is said, is made with a heart, because it really is like this. Hands and heart are connected. Masseuses know this. When they touch another person's body with their hands, they create a deep connection. Thinking of lovers, when their hands touch, they love each other in the most sublime way. My hands, Grandma, how long haven't I used them like that? Move them, my girl. Start creating with them, and everything in you will move. The pain will not pass away, but it will be the best masterpiece, and it won't hurt anymore because you manage to embroider your essence. So how can we embroider our essence into our social and community working? With hands. So what I brought to share with you is a simple embodiment method created to enhance your well-being and social working. And it came to me, and I've been playing with it during the COVID season, and I've been using it for assessment, empowerment, relaxation. I use it in my supervisions. I use it for meditation, mediation. I use it for work with couples, community development, embodiment, acknowledgement. You can easily modify it. So what I thought of doing today is just show to you a basic way of working with the hand model. Hands also stand for a holistic, affirmative, natural development system. And this is my offering to you. So I would like to invite you to gently hold your left hand in your right hand. So just like on the picture, just gently and comfortably hold your left hand, regardless of you being left-handed or right-handed. Just hold your left hand and cradle it. Cradle it like you would cradle a kitten or a puppy. Pay attention to the lines that tell stories of your life. Be kind to your hand. Be kind to it like it belongs to a best friend or to a loved companion. Appreciate your left hand. Thank it for being there for you, either in a leading or supporting role in your life. And then gently start by massaging your thumb. Your thumb represents your ancestors, the long lineage that enable you to be a person you are today. So these ancestors can be your blood relatives, but also significant elders that shape your ideas, beliefs, ways of being. They can be real or they can be fictional. They can be teachers or writers. They can be philosophers or influencers. But just acknowledge people who helped you become a person you are today while you are massaging your thumb. So your thumb also represents your survival. But also that thumb is an opposing thumb. It enabled you to oppose to ancestral stories that were no longer valid or life-giving for you. Your thumb represents a strong drive for survival and necessity of maintaining physical health. It represents your immune system. It represents your physical health and your physical needs, which is need for food, warmth, shelter. So basics, really basics. So briefly reflect on a long line of beings who contributed to you being a person you are today. Acknowledge them. Acknowledge them in your mind and thank them. And just gently move from your thumb towards your index finger, and in between your thumb and your index finger, there is a spot that will feel tender. If you just try to find it and massage it for a minute. This is a point of choice. This is a point where we accept life-giving messages from our ancestors and elders and histories. And this is a point where we reject prejudices, dogmas, impositions, injunctions, unexamined beliefs, nonsenses that are sometimes imposed on us, like how to behave, all shoulds and musts that have been imposed on us over years and that we don't need anymore. So please move now to a forefinger or your index finger. So this finger represents your need for freedom. It represents the need for freedom from abuse, oppression, and violence, and the freedom to be who you are, the freedom of choice, the freedom of moving through space you want to move, and freedom to point out when something is not right, or freedom to shake it when you disagree or say no. It represents the freedom to be you because nobody can do it better. Also, holding this finger can help reduce muscle pains and feelings of fear, embarrassment, or disappointment. Now gently move to your middle finger. So we all know what middle finger stands for. But in this case, it stands for your need for power. Power, potency, competence, strength, and influence. So as you're massaging your middle finger, think of your competences and your strengths. When you're competent in doing something, you often love it. When you love something, you will put a lot of energy in mastering it. You will put your heart and soul into it. So if you are angry or annoyed, you can press this finger and you can slightly decrease your blood pressure, which will then increase your sense of being calm. So as much as it represents energy and potency, gently massaging it and giving it that attention can slightly lower your blood pressure. So now I would like to invite you to explore your ring finger. As you probably envisage, it represents our need for love and belonging, but love in the widest possible sense. Not only love that you will put your wedded ring on, but love for activities, nature, people, places, connection. And as you are massaging your ring finger, I would like you to reflect on people, activities, companions, colleagues, places, and spaces that you love. Hold them in your mind's eye, being aware that you love, that your love you feel for others is about your soul expanding and appreciating difference and uniqueness of every single expression of life on this planet. And of course, your little finger. Your little finger is about fun. It's about fun and expression of joy. And fun and learning, according to William Glasser, some of you will be familiar with him, fun and learning are closely related. And Glasser said that fun is, the sense of fun is a biological reward for learning. So lightheartedness and playfulness adds joy to every endeavor. So we learn the best when we are having fun. That's why I'm saying why I'm missing our coffees and field trips and in between spaces of the symposium. The thing with the middle finger is that if you massage it for 5 minutes, it helps boosting self-esteem and it also increases creativity. So now I would like to invite you to gently spiral with your right index finger in the middle of your palm. Right in the center of your palm, there is a sensitive spot. You will feel it, it's almost ticklish. Just gently, gently spiral. And this spot represents your soul. It radiates and informs everything else. Let it inspire your transformational work in the world. So for a closure, I'm inviting you to rub your hands together and thank them for being there for you. And listen to the soothing sound they make. And as you are doing that, I wish your grandma's best wishes for you and the world that manifest through your hands. So I just wish you all your grandma's wishes to manifest in this world.